Hey folks, and we're back. Number 7 on my Hammer Horror list. Something I might actually get completed very soon. Trying to do quite a few of these videos in succession. So yeah, made it to number 7, which isn't far, I know. But I've talked about one film that I really don't like, and then one film that I'll watch because it's weird and mad. It's not particularly good, but it's entertaining. At number 7, I mean, it's all a bit arbitrary really when you rank things like this, but number 7 is a film that I think is just a little bit above those two. Um, it's a film that I originally was disappointed with. This film originally would if I'd done this list 10 years ago, would have been at number 8 on the list. But it's cropped up to number 7 now, which might not sound a lot, but I think it shows that it is. I like it more and more each time I watch it, and I've watched it quite a few times now. And that's 1972's Dracula 1972 AD. Which is a film that I think has a lot of really good ideas. It's executed pretty poorly. It's another curious one, but I still quite enjoy this for what it is. So this one basically tried to put Dracula into the modern age. At the time, 1972 was the modern age. Might seem retro now, but it wasn't at the time. And yeah, there's a lot to like about this. So firstly, this film has, I think, arguably the best pre-credit, pre-title sequence of any of the Hammer Dracula movies. That fight that Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee have on the carriage, which is set in the 1870s. It's just wonderful. It's gritty, it's dark. It doesn't look like any of the other Hammers that came before it. It's got this really sort of like dirty, grimy look to it. But it's a great fight scene and, ultimately ends in their deaths. And I just think it's a really good title. I'd love to have seen a film entirely like that. I'd love to have seen a film where that was the end and what we would have got before. It's just really, really good. Anyway, we then fast forward 100 years to 1972 with a plane shot overhead, and we're basically introduced to the modern world. And it's at least Hammer trying to do something and mix the formula up a bit and not, mess with things. And straight away, there's a weird continuity issue. I mean, the continuity was not part of Hammer's forte because if that scene happened in 1872, then it means that none of the other stuff that's happened in any of the other films could have taken place because the very first Dracula is set in 1885, and we go from there for the first 5 or 6. We'll get there really, in terms of how the years that they follow each other. This one, obviously, starting in 1872, being the final encounter between the original Van Helsing and Dracula, was 13 years before they even met, according to Hammer's original one. So it's all over the place. You've got to just sort of like ignore continuity and let it go because it makes no sense. We just go with it. As I always say that from Dracula or Horror Dracula up to Taste the Blood of Dracula are set in the same universe, although there's lots of continuity issues. I will get to them. Then Scars of Dracula, its own thing. Then Dracula 1972 and Stanley Rights are both connected very explicitly. And then Seven Golden Vampires is just wherever that is. Just anyway, we've got a descendant of Van Helsing here. Van Helsing's grandson, played wonderfully by Peter Cushing. And we've also got Johnny Alucard. Now, I can't remember the guy's name who played him. I don't check these things. I'm just trying to remember from memory. Can't remember, but he's great. His original, I guess, great grandfather witnessed the death of Van Helsing and Dracula and took Dracula's ashes, or sort of. They're not really ashes. It's more like powdered blood. But he took that, and for generations they've kept hold of it to resurrect Dracula. It's taken 100 years for his, I'm guessing, grandson or great grandson to resurrect Dracula. Don't know, makes no sense again, but he has. But anyway, he's here and he's got this group of friends that are all sort of party goers, and he's waiting to resurrect Dracula. Again, I'm not sure why he's waited all this time. It's one of the things that sets the film down because, again, continuity, it's all over the place. But anyway, he decides he's going to resurrect Dracula in this sort of desecrated, abandoned church, which I like the idea of because there's an element there that ties into Taste the Blood of Dracula, and I'll get to that later when I review that film. But it's a desecrated church, and at one point he's performing a ritual ceremony with his friends watching, who aren't sure whether this is fake or real. He pretends it's fake to them, but it's very real. And his first sacrifice, which is the wonderful Caroline Munro, she's the first to die, and then Dracula, as a result, Dracula's reborn as a result of this ceremony, and he kills Caroline Munro. How all this happens, I don't know, because we've got these ashes, but outside of this church, there's this grave which throbs and pulsates as if Dracula's coming out of the earth. But the next minute he's there. I'm not sure how he's actually been resurrected. It's all a bit weird and up in the air. Go with it. So, Caroline Munro's in this. She's only in it for a short while, and it's a shame because she was one of Hammer's best later era sort of Hammer girls. She was always a stunningly attractive woman, but also a really solid Hammer girl. She really gets to shine in Kronos, Vampire Hunter, which I'll talk about later in my Hammer films. Massively underrated film, that, and she's really good in that. She's only got a small role here, but Dracula kills her. Van Helsing has a granddaughter called Jessica, who here is played by Stephanie Beacham. In the next film, she's played by Joanna Lumley. I don't know why, because I think, nothing against Joanna Lumley, I just think Stephanie Beacham was much better as a character. I just think she suited Hammer a lot better, and she's got a much better role here. She's got more to do, so she's quite good in this, Stephanie Beacham. And anyway, Stephanie Beacham and her friends are all mates with this Johnny Alucard, who is Dracula backwards. Not sure why he had to be called Alucard, because he's not Dracula. He's not even the son of Dracula. He's just a guy. But he wants basically Dracula to give him the power, which is to become a vampire. And later on, he does. He gets transformed into a vampire, despite the fact that he sort of challenges Dracula a bit, goes toe to toe with Christopher Lee, and is like demanding. Even though Christopher Lee's usually kills anyone, the last person that I've mentioned that challenged him, which was that Chinese guy, just got vaporized for daring to speak to Dracula. Here, though, the guy who plays Johnny Alucard, wish I could remember his name because he's really good. He becomes a vampire, and he starts basically corrupting and stealing and lying to all his friends, basically using them all, because I think the end game's to get Jessica, because Dracula just sort of like corrupt her a bit, ultimately killed or become his bride as a big middle finger to Van Helsing. Why didn't get resurrected years and kill Van Helsing's son, who clearly did nothing, because it's his grandson who's another Van Helsing. I don't know, it doesn't matter. Anyway, like I said, the film's set in 1972, and there's an awful lot of waffling and stuff here, but Peter Cushing sells most of this with his expressionist acting. I just find him mesmerising in films. He's a brilliant actor just because of his facial expressions. He has a great showdown with Alucard, which involves quite a lot of stuff going on. It's a really good showdown. Again, won't spoil it if you haven't seen it, but I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a great final battle sequence with them two, and how he disposes of him. There's a hilarious bit where Peter Cushing's sitting in a study writing Dracula and Alucard and connecting these in this really bizarre way of trying to find out that they're actually the same word. One's backwards. You could see instantly it's backwards, but he's drawing these lines all over these letters. It's a moment of absolute levity. I just think this is better paced than Satanic Rites. It's similar, but it's better paced. It doesn't have any of the nonsense of like Plague. It's all focusing on Dracula and Johnny to an extent, and this personal vendetta that Dracula's got against him. One thing I don't get is it's 1972, but Dracula doesn't have any scenes in 1972 insofar as he spends all his time in this desecrated church, which looks all the world like any of the other sort of period Dracula films. This could have been set in 1872, where Dracula's concerned. It wouldn't have made any difference. So he doesn't get to go into the modern world. He doesn't engage with people. It's not like Dracula's walking around the streets. He's just in a church, which could have been back in the 1870s. And it's a bit of a letdown in that sense, because I wanted to see what Dracula was like in the 70s, how he would react to modern technology and modern life. And we don't get any of that. What we do get is a decent showdown when Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee meet, in the church and their showdown. I mean, I know a lot of people say it's a bit naff. I actually think this is pretty good. There's a lot of pacing. There's a lot of action. Peter Cushing thinks he's killed Dracula, but Dracula uses his granddaughter to sort of bring him back again. I mean, this is the only film I can think of in which technically Dracula is killed 3 times. I'm not quite sure what Peter Cushing was doing in the graveyard, digging a big hole, putting spikes there for Dracula to fall in, because he might as well have just walked into the church and staked him there and then. It just seems bizarre to me that he chose to do this. And the fact that Dracula follows him out eventually and knows it's there and doesn't just sidestep around it, he's just standing there looking at it and smiling. But Peter Cushing does have his holy water to throw into his face, then he falls into the pit. It's a clumsy, silly death in terms of Dracula often died in clumsy, silly ways. Like, this master vampire should be more intelligent than this. But I actually don't think that's a bad ending. I think the build-up, the battle, the way in which Dracula dies being impaled and then Peter Cushing's pushing him onto the spikes, I actually like it. I think it's a decent ending for a Dracula film, despite the fact that Dracula is a bit clumsy. Like I said, if he'd been punched or thrown into the pit, I would have liked him more, but I'm not really sure what Van Helsing was thinking building this pit rather than just walking in there and staking him in daylight. God knows why. But anyway, it's a decent ending. It's a strange film. It's got a few moments where it sags. It's unintentionally hilarious, like I say, in a few bits. But for the most part, I actually think this is fairly solid. I actually think this is a decent film. I'd much rather watch this than the previous two. And whilst all the other films on this list are better, this is an okay film. I like it. So it's at number 7, but don't let that put you off the fact that I think it's a bit odd and it's a bit quirky, but it's nonetheless fairly enjoyable. So it's Dracula 1972 AD.